my computer. It is 10 a.m. And if you are prepared, we are ready to start.
All right. Good morning. Oh, hold on. Okay, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I'm in a room with a phone that I cannot mute, so please bear with me. Okay. Okay. Welcome to the Metro Plan Orlando Quality Assurance Task Force Virtual Workshop. I'd like to call the meeting to order. My name is Marilyn Baldwin, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. We also have a team of folks working to assure this meeting runs smoothly. Today's meeting was advertised on MetroPlan Orlando's website and social media, as well as through targeted emails. Florida's Sunshine Law requires a quorum to be physically present in a room for a government meeting in order for action to be taken on items presented. However, due to the recent surge in the COVID positivity rate, the decision was made to hold today's meeting as a virtual workshop. What this means is a physical in-person quorum is not needed. We are able to receive presentations, discuss items on the agenda, and come to a consensus, but we will not take a formal vote on any of the items. The full Tdlcb will act on these items at our meeting February 10th, which is currently scheduled to be an in-person meeting. Now, I'd like to ask Ms. Lisa Smith to call the roll for the purpose of taking attendance. Mrs. Smith, you're recognized.
Good morning. Our committee members, please go ahead and unmute yourselves now for the roll call. You can go on mute again after your name is called. Please make sure your video is on if possible so that we can confirm that it's you. You will find the unmute and video buttons on the bottom left side of your toolbar. On the bottom of your screen, please say here or present when your name is called. Baldwin.
Present.
Bullard.
Here.
Berry.
Present.
Ford.
Present.
Hickling.
Present.
Melia.
Present.
Olson.
Present.
Madam Chair, that concludes the roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. All right. Next, Mrs. Whittington will review the agenda. Mrs. Whittington, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members, and thank you all for being here today. And also thank you to those who have joined us online or on the phone. I want to recognize before I get into the agenda review that we are joined in our audience today by Honorable Carolyn Campbell, who serves on Soil and Water Conservation. Today's meeting is accessible to the public via computer, tablet, or phone, and instructions on how to make public comments will be given when we arrive at that time on the agenda. Recording of this meeting will be available later on MetroPlan Orlando's YouTube channel. Madam Chair and members, there is one item on your agenda. There's one change. Item 10, the review of the draft health services transportation plan is being postponed at the request of Links. Mr. Norm Hickling will provide a little more about that, and he's going to give us an updated schedule on when that will come to you. Secondly, I want to ensure that everyone received the supplemental packet of candidate applications that you're also going to review. And with that, Madam Chair, we are prepared to move forward with the rest of the agenda as printed.
Thank you, Mrs. Whittington. Let's move on to the items for review and discussion. Although we will not be taking formal actions today, the LCB will at their next meeting. So at this time, we will open it up for public comments. If any member of the public wishes to make comments, please use the raised hand function and you will be recognized. Or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We will unmute your mic. After you are recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes or less. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? And Miss Virginia Whittington will let me know if there is anyone wishing to speak and she will recognize you.
Madam Chair, we do have a hand from Honorable Carolyn Campbell.
Right. Carolyn, you were recognized.
Good morning. This is Supervisor Carolyn Campbell. Thank you for recognizing me. I just wanted to reiterate that we heard that, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
wanted to reiterate that we have heard that some individuals who are needing to go get testing are having difficulty doing so on access links, and we need to find a solution for our individuals, even though access links will take you to be able to get a COVID vaccine, the testing seems to be a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Are there any other comments or raised hands at this time?
Madam Chair, you have a hand by Mr. Bob Melia.
My apologies if this is the wrong time, and but I have 2 questions. This is the first meeting I've participated in, so if I'm supposed to wait till later, I can do that.
As a board member, Bob, may I suggest that you wait and we'll allow the public to do this part first?
Sure,
I promise I will come back to you.
no worries.
All right. Are there any other raised hands or comments at this time?
Madam Chair, yes, you have a hand by Ms. Sherry Brunn, and I will unmute her now.
Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Brunn, and my brief question is: this is not real. This is more a public comment rather than an action item. So, should I put my comment at the end of the meeting?
No, go ahead. You may
Okay.
speak.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I have 2 comments. I want to reiterate what the Honorable Carolyn Campbell said about testing being difficult. I did go for a COVID test last week and did eventually have to rely on my son, who had to take time off work to take me for the test. I do not understand why links can't handle it the same way they handled being vaccinated for COVID, which is a round trip. But the more important comment, well, they're both important, but the one I really want to stress is I am totally blind and have been so all my life due to a condition called retinopathy of prematurity, which is non-reversible and non-correctable. My access links application has to be renewed. It has been 2 years. It is very, very difficult for me to get this application filled out, signed, and ready to go back to access links. I believe that those of us with permanent, irreversible, non-correctable conditions should be exempt from the every 2-year application and should possibly have to reapply at a longer interval, say maybe 4 to 5 years, since nothing is going to change about our eye condition. And I would hope the board would take this into consideration and could do something to help act upon this issue. When we could come in to have them help, that was great, but now we can't. So it's almost impossible to get the form filled out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brun, and I believe that later in the agenda, Mr. Hinckley will have something to share with us about that.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Were there any other written or phone comments that are submitted before the meeting?
There were not, Madam Chair.
Any other raised hands? All right.
There are not anymore.
Very good. All right. I'm going to call on Mrs. Whittington to present the next item, which is the discussion of the 2022 Quality Assurance Task Force Chairperson and Vice Chairperson. Mrs. Whittington?
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members. The discussion that is before you this morning is to select a chairperson and vice chairperson that will be submitted to the Tdlcb for approval. This chair and vice chair would come from those QATF members who are eligible to serve. Ms. Marilyn Baldwin has done a yeoman's job of chairing this committee, and it is my understanding that if she were to be recommended once again, that she is willing to serve for another year. However, there are others who might be interested in serving, and so at this time, if there are no questions, we can move forward with the nominations from the floor. And that would come from any of the QATF members. Ms. Berry?
I'm sorry, I was looking for my raised hand and press mute. I would definitely like to nominate Marilyn Baldwin.
A second.
Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of Marilyn Baldwin to continue as chair, please say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Well, congratulations, Ms. Baldwin. You are continuing in your role as chair for 2022. And now Crystal Ford is your current vice chair. And again, like Marilyn Baldwin, Crystal is eligible to serve again as your vice chair. And if at this time, we will open the floor for recommendations for vice chair. Ms. Berry?
I would like to recommend Crystal Ford as the vice chair for the 2022 QATF.
Marilyn Baldwin, I second the nomination, if she's still willing.
And her silence, she's on mute.
He is still willing.
Okay, all right. Okay, now all those in favor of this recommendation, please say aye.
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 And opposed, like sign. Okay, well, congratulations, Crystal Ford. We will present your name as well as Marilyn Baldwin's name for the officers for 2022. And although we did this in the form of vote, this is going to be verified and confirmed by the Tdlcb on February 10th. Madam Chairman, that concludes the officers' selection.
All right, very good. And I want to thank Ms. Berry for her vote of confidence, and I will try to do my best. All right, the next item that we have is review of the candidate applications and member recommendations. And Ms. Whittington, please proceed with this item for us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You all received a supplemental memo. The period of the application submissions was December 28th through January 21st. we received 6 applications in interest to serve in to fill 2 spots. And the first is an advocate representing the elderly over 60. You will recall Dr. Linda Silverman, who moved away to the DC area, which left that vacancy. And so that is the first slot that is vacant and looking to be filled. And then the second is a for-profit operator, which was left vacant once it was determined that Chris York, who had previously served for MV Transportation, and because MV Transportation is one of the current providers, they were deemed ineligible to serve. So the name that you see with the asterisk, Maricel Rodriguez Mabry, she submitted applications for not only the Tdlcb, but she also submitted an application for our Community Advisory Committee. And on her application for Community Advisory Committee, she noted that she is a transportation provider. She owns a transportation company. I spoke with her, and she is not receiving any 5310 funds. She is not doing any work with Access Links. And so she would be eligible to serve in the role of for-profit operator, and is the only applicant that is eligible to serve in that role. So, Madam Chair, at this time, I will turn it back into your hands to facilitate discussion on the remaining candidates.
All right. I thank you, Ms. Whittington. You always do such a good job of keeping us on task. I would recommend, knowing that we have Ms. Maricel Rodriguez Mabry as the for-profit operator, that we would submit her name for that position.
I would agree that, does this have to be a motion, even though it's moving forward as a recommendation? What are we moving?
No motions at this time. It's basically discussion of each of the candidates and those, how you may have ranked them, and whatever you may have gleaned from their applications. And I think what the chair is trying to do is dispose of the easy one first.
Well, I'm in agreement. Oh, I'm sorry. I spoke without being recognized. I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of recommending Maricel Rodriguez Mabry for the for-profit operator position on our Tdlcb, signify by saying aye.
Ms. Baldwin, we will not be taking votes. It's just
Oh, no.
consensus as you heard from Ms. Berry. And you did have a hand by Bob Melia, so he may have had some input into that as well.
Okay, and I apologize for being out of order. Mr. Melia?
Well, I was just gonna say, it seems like she's the only viable candidate. So, I mean, if there's no other place around the place, it must be the place.
All right, okay. Does that meet the consensus of the committee this morning then?
Well, I think if no one has any objection, we can definitely move forward with that recommendation.
All right. Then the next position that we need to fill is an individual representing persons over the age of 60. And is there discussion? There are a lot of good candidates. Would like to hear the consensus comments from the committee. I'll start you off then. And
We do have a hand by Mr. Melia.
all right, Mr. Bob.
Yes, thank you again. I am unable to pull it up, but it seemed like some weren't users, some weren't as familiar as they should be, in my opinion. So I'd like to discuss that.
All right, that certainly is an area to be considered. If they weren't users, you know, it does, it does cloud their perspective. But any discussions on that, on those comments that Mr. Amelia raised? I'll give you an example of what he's talking about. There is one individual who, and I'm trying to find mine, I'm so sorry, but being vision impaired, sometimes I do move a little slow, you all, and I thank you for your patience. But there's one individual who is between the ages of 25 and 34. Unless she were working in the field of serving seniors, I would say that would not be a good fit for this particular position. But we could certainly use her as an at-large alternate or something else at a later time. Other comments? We really need for you all to take a moment, look at your paperwork. Yes, Crystal.
Are we talking about Charlotte Campbell? Were we talking
No, ma'am.
about?
No, ma'am. I'm talking about Ashley Gus.
Okay, Ashley Gus, okay.
Good candidate, but her age ranges 25 to 34. Miss Campbell does meet the age requirement. Okay. Other comments? There was another individual who, I don't know whether it was, let me find the name, who indicated that he might not be able to serve at the time that we meet. Well, that would be a consideration as well. But I need to hear from the other committee members, please.
Give a hand by Mr. Wayne Olson.
Mr. Olson?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think someone who's not a senior should be representing the senior group. I agree with that. I
Right.
agree that that person not be a candidate for that particular position.
Right, not for that particular position. Now, we have the gentleman who said that he cannot possibly attend the meetings at the time that we meet. That I would have a concern about too. Staff could check that for us to be sure. But if you tell right away that you can't attend, that's a problem.
I agree with that too.
Hand by Mr.
That's
Amelia.
elimination.
I'm sorry, who's the hand by?
Mr. Amelia.
Mr. Amelia?
Thank you. I guess this is a question for Virginia. Yeah, I've known Cheryl Stone for practically the entire time I have lived here in Orlando. Is there any kind of conflict there? I mean, I like Cheryl. I know she's a smart woman. Does that muddy the water at all?
Now, Cheryl Stone is eligible to serve. Most recently, she served on our Community Advisory Committee. She had been an alternate to Dr. Linda Silverman before she left, and she had done a great job in standing in when Dr. Silverman was not able to attend the Tdlcb meetings. And then Cheryl applied to the Community Advisory Committee, where she served short-term and resigned recently. And I'm guessing that she resigned because she was interested in applying for a seat on the Tdlcb. And so there is no conflict. She is eligible, and I will leave it at that.
Thank you.
Cheryl would be a good addition to our board. I would have no problems with that at all. She's very knowledgeable, has represented us at the state level on our Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. She is a person who lives with a mobility impairment. So that is a perspective that is important to us as well. Bob, are you making this in the form of a motion to be considered? I'm sorry, not a motion, but a recommendation? Is that the correct terminology, Miss Virginia?
Yes, and then we
Okay.
do have two other hands with
All
comments.
right. Who are the other two hands, please?
Crystal Ford and Dana Baker.
All right, Crystal first and then Dana.
I'm just a little confused because we're jumping around from person to person. Can we
Okay.
go to each name and discuss their qualifications and then make a recommendation or whatever we need to do one by one instead of jumping all around?
Comment is noted. Dana, and then we will take the suggestion that Crystal has, unless Dana, you have something that we need to hear before we do that. Go ahead.
Good morning. The only recommendation I had is I think I agree with Bob that whoever the selected candidate is should really have some, I guess, understanding of transit. One of the things I did see on Cheryl's information that she is an occasional user of the system. And that to me keeps the person engaged and connected to the service that we're providing and the system and what the needs are for our elderly. So I just wanted to put that comment out.
All right, very good. All right.
And Madam Chair, as you all are getting ready to move forward, I want to put an appendage on to Ms. Baker's comment. We have seats on the Tdlcb. Some require the person to be a system user. Others are non-system users. So while using the system is definitely a benefit to the work that you all do, for this particular seat, it's not a requirement. So I just wanted to make sure that you all understand that that should not be something that would deem a person ineligible. It comes as a bonus for you all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Whittington. That's very helpful. All right, we will go person by person, and staff, if you will help us with this as we go forward. Our first applicant is Mrs. Charlotte Campbell. She's from Orange County. She meets the eligibility requirements. Are there any comments about Mrs. Campbell? She is new to our area, but I believe she's been here for about a year and a half now. Is interested in her application says she's, let me find the little write-up. I am a passionate advocate for transportation to enable independence for all. And I also believe in finding positive and impactful ways to serve my community. And I believe that becoming a member of the Tdlcb would be a wonderful way to use my skills and my many years of experience in multiple areas. As a retired private duty nurse, grandmother, and mother to blind independent adults, and a disabled minority senior myself who uses the Access Link service, I am able to see solutions from multiple angles. And I look forward to your consideration of my application and would be honored to serve. Okay, any comments that you see you would like to make about Ms. Campbell's application?
There's a hand by Ms. Ford.
Ms. Ford, Crystal,
And what position is she applying for?
over the age of 60. And she does meet the age range requirement. Okay. Any other comments? All right, we'll move on to the next one. Ashley Gus. Ashley also lives in Orange County. She meets the eligibility requirements. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to flip. Crystal, your idea about going page by page was good, but it doesn't work for the way my pages are stapled. Miss Virginia, can you help with this one for me, please?
Sure. Okay, Ms. Gus is, she's a resident of Orange County. She works in Kissimmee, so she has a little bit of regional aspect there. She does not use, she occasionally uses the Lynx bus system, often uses Sunrail. She is eligible as either.
Sunrail use, it says not at all.
I'm sorry, occasionally drive the car. Thank you. Thank you. I was scrolling too fast there. And then for her statement of interest, she said, I hope that my role in Tdlcb can assist me in sharing the ways that young people can be a part of decisions that impact our daily lives and others less fortunate. I hope that my service provides an example of integrity and pride for my home. And so again, this is the candidate that her age range is 25 to 34, and the seat that is vacant at the moment on the Tdlcb is representing the elderly over the age 60.
Comments, questions? Okay, hearing none.
Hand by Crystal Ford, Madam Chair, sorry.
Crystal?
I don't see how someone 25 to 34 can represent an age group of 60 and above. That's just my thoughts.
Well, my concern as well. Okay.
And members, I'll also remind you that you are able to select alternates today. So if this person is interested in serving as an alternate in the event that, you know, some of our other members are not able to attend, we would be able to engage her that way as well.
All right. Any other questions about Ms. Gus? All right, we'll move on to Joseph Cologne. Again, Miss Virginia.
Sure. Joseph Cologne is a resident of Orange County in the city of Orlando. He occasionally uses the bus system. He regularly uses Sunrail, does not drive a car. He is within the age range for this particular seat. The meetings are held 4 times a year. He says he's able to attend the meetings. He could serve a 4-year term. And I will let you all know that Mr. Cologne is a former Metro Plan Orlando board member who served representing Osceola County many years ago. And his statement of interest is, as a disabled individual and user of the system, I can provide valuable input as to improvements and future upgrades to the system.
Questions, comments?
I don't see any hands at this moment.
All right, then we'll go on to Ron.
Hand by Wayne Olson.
Mr. Olson?
Yeah, I think this is a strong candidate with his background, age, and a user of the system. Should be considered.
All right, very good. Any other comments? Okay, then we go to Roger Mann. And Miss Virginia, I'll let you continue with Roger and then with Cheryl.
Okay. Mr. Roger Mann is an Orange County resident. He is, he does not use the Links system, does not use Sunrail. He regularly drives a car. He is interested in representing the elderly over age 60, and he is within the age range. This candidate states that they are not able to attend on those days that we meet, but could serve a 4-year term. I'm not sure if that they can't attend regularly was intentional, or if that was just a slip of the fingers. But his statement of interest is, I believe there's a strong need for senior citizen representation throughout Central Florida. This community has strong standing and is entitled to its voice.
Comments, questions?
I don't see any hands, Madam Chair. Oh, there, Crystal Ford.
Crystal?
Virginia, would someone be able to verify if he can attend or cannot attend the meetings? I think that's important.
Sure. If he comes forward as a strong candidate, we are able to give him a call. Again, the decisions or the recommendations that you make will go before the LCB. So if you are inclined to submit one or more and let the LCB make the decision, we can follow up with phone calls to get clarification on any questions you have.
All right. Anything else?
I thought I saw another hand, but I think it went back down. Okay.
All right. And last but not least is Mrs. Cheryl Stone.
Okay, members, Cheryl Stone is Orange County resident. She occasionally uses the Links bus system, occasionally uses Sunrail. She also drives. She is able to represent the elderly over age 60. She is within the age range. She's able to attend the meetings. She has, as was mentioned earlier, she served on the Community Advisory Committee for the last year. She has served as an alternate on the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board at times. And she has served statewide as well as a advocate for the disabled community. Her statement of interest: I have been a vocal and involved advocate for multimodal accessibility inclusion to improve independence for persons with disabilities. Having alternate options to travel via auto, rail, and transit allows us the equal opportunities to education, employment, and community involvement. Also, to participate in family and social activities. Unfortunately, many times in our society, people with disabilities and/or persons of a certain age are viewed as needing medical transportation exclusively. This is a misleading stereotype that must be consistently challenged and changed. And that is Ms. Stone.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Okay, I do not see any hands, but this could be like those field goals at the end of those playoff games last week. Okay, no hands at this time.
All right, you've had a good review of each of the candidates. We can, I believe, do one of two things. We can make a recommendation at this time, or we can forward with comments the candidates to the full board and let them make the decision. Is this correct, Ms. Whittington?
Well, I was hoping that we might be able to shortlist because you're going to end up having the same conversation again at the board meeting. So if it's possible I see a hand by Mr. Melia.
Bob?
Mr. Melia, you need to unmute.
Sorry, just when I was doing so well. If we can make a short list, I would like to recommend Cheryl Stone and Joseph Cologne. They seem like the far and away better candidates than the others, just with their knowledge and experience.
Okay, others?
Mr. Olson.
Hence, I'm sorry, someone speaking the floor?
Mr. Olson's hand is raised.
Okay, Mr. Olson?
Yeah, I would agree with Bob's comments. Those two candidates should be forwarded.
Okay. Other board members, please?
Nika Berry and Dana Baker, in that order.
Nika?
Cheryl Stone was my first, based on her experience, and you all answered the questions that I had as we were moving forward. I'm not clear. So for the alternate, I guess this question is for Ms. Whittington. For the alternate, do we make a recommendation for that as well, or is that done after the member is selected?
It really is the prerogative of this board. You can make that along with this recommendation. You can say that your recommendation is Cheryl Stone is your number one, and then Jose Cologne, and another might be your recommendation for at-large alternates.
Okay, so for me, that Cheryl Stone, based on her experience, the fact that she was an alternate for the position prior and committed to that, I think is why I primarily chose her as my first. And then if Joseph Cologne, and then my recommendation also would have been Joseph Cologne, or even Charlotte Campbell as the alternate for that. But then it seems like I heard that there's a possibility because Cheryl Stone served on the community, so maybe Charlotte could serve there. Like, my mind is all over the place right now, but definitely Cheryl Stone.
There was a call for applicants for both of these committees at the same time. I'm not sure if Ms. Campbell applied to the other board, and that process has closed. In fact, they'll be going through the same process next week. Ms. Baker's hand is raised.
All right, Ms. Baker?
I just would like to add, I agree with the other committee members. Cheryl Stone is my first recommendation, and Joseph Cologne second as an alternative based on their background and experience.
Okay. My recommendation would be Mrs. Stone, Ms. Campbell, and then Mr. Cologne, only because Mr. Cologne seems to have everybody else's, he's a good candidate, but I believe Mrs. Campbell is as well, and could serve as an alternate. So maybe if we went with our ranking so far, it seems to me it would be it would be Mrs. Stone, Mr. Cologne, and then Mrs. Campbell. Is that your consensus, members?
I did see Mr. Ballard unmute. I'm not sure he did. He raised his hand. So Mr. Ballard would like to be recognized.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes, I just wanted to chime in as well. I like the Cheryl Stone as first, and then Gary and Joseph Cologne. Just want to chime in on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of your sentence.
Just want to give my feedback on that as well. With Cheryl Stone being first, and then second being Joseph Cologne.
All right. Any other comments or questions? We have some really good candidates this time, and that's outstanding. I'm happy to hear that there's interest, and if those persons who are interested, as Mrs. Whittington said, did not make it as the top person that we recommend, they certainly can serve as alternates, members waiting in the wing.
So, Madam Chair and members, thank you so much. This has been very, very helpful. Based on what we've heard this morning, we will present a recommendation of Cheryl Stone to fill the vacancy in the representing the elderly over 60, and then Mr. Cologne and Ms. Campbell as 2 alternates. And I will speak with them to make sure that they are interested in serving in those capacities.
All right, very good. Any other comments before we move on? All right, the next item is the annual Tdlcb bylaws and review. And again, Mrs. Whittington, if you will please lead us through this discussion.
Sure, Madam Chair and members. Annually, we are required to review the LCB bylaws and submit any recommendations for changes or revisions that might be necessary. Staff has reviewed them and did not find any necessary changes. Of course, we are going to still wait on the state legislature to make a decision on whether these type meetings might be able to be codified in law that would allow us to meet virtually. But we did not see any need for changes. And if there are any from this body, we are prepared to receive those.
Ms. Virginia, has there been or could there be a letter from our board chair for this board and possibly the Metro Plan board in support of allowing these meetings to be virtual when needed, especially since many of us who serve have underlying health conditions that prevent us from always serving in person when there is a pandemic going on and when the when those conditions change.
Absolutely. We can submit a letter of support. Metro Plan Orlando has this on their legislative priorities as an item that they support. The Metropolitan Planning Organization Advisory Committee, which is the statewide organization of all of the MPOs, has it on their list of priorities as well. It just has not garnered the support at the state level. So at this point, a letter would definitely be in order, and we can do that. I just don't hold out much hope.
I don't either, but we can certainly continue to try, because when there is a surge in the COVID positivity rate, that really makes it hard for those of us who are committed, want to serve, need to be there in person, but do you put yourself at risk?
Right.
Okay, back to the bylaws and review. Are there any comments, questions?
Or if there are any changes that anyone came across that need to be made, we'll receive those. But I don't see any hands, so.
All right, is it your recommendation that we approve the prepared bylaws that were presented to us this morning, given to us this morning?
Well, we will submit that to the LCB as a recommendation that no changes.
All right, Ms. Whittington, proceed with the next item, which is our Tdlcb grievance procedure.
Sure, Madam Chair, and the same with the grievance procedures. Annually, we're required to review them. There has not been any change in terms of the process. And of course, this grievance procedure is enacted when there is an unreconcilable complaint that is filed with the access links or links. In my 25 years of being at Metro Plan Orlando, this committee and this grievance procedure has only been used once that I can recall, and but it has to be reviewed for in accordance with our grant. So if there are any changes, we'll take note.
Changes, recommendations? All right, if not, we will recommend that this document also be approved by the full LCB. Okay, and then our next item is discussion of the eligibility application. And Ms. Whittington?
Yes, Madam Chair and members, those of you who attended the November annual meeting, you heard some concerns that came forward from some of the writers, as well as some of the licensed medical professionals who are no longer eligible to sign these eligibility for applicants. And Ms. Baldwin, at that time, you said that you wanted to bring this back to have some additional discussion on it. I think the timing is good, as you are going to be making changes to the Transportation Disadvantaged Service Plan. And so your discussion today will lead to any potential changes that could be made. And I want to, if with your permission, Madam Chair, ask either Dana Baker or Norm Hickling to kind of weigh in from Links and Access Links' perspective before we go any further, if that's okay.
Certainly.
I'd be glad to. I mean, the application, what we did was to try to have a, signed off by a professional, licensed medical professional and everything. So, I mean, if it's the desire of the QATF and to the Tdlcb to expand that to broaden that scope to, social services or something of that sort, we're certainly open to working with you all and to make that happen, if that is the desire of this committee.
I think one of the persons who was on that public meeting was a licensed social worker, and she expressed a lot of concern that many of the clients would see them before they would be able to see a doctor. And so it had, and you heard from Sherry Brunn earlier today, who talked about the difficulty in her getting her application done.
And the question that came up in the debate that we had internally is, can that social worker, while highly qualified in many, in a professional sense, can they make a diagnosis of a disability? And so, that's the one thing that we'd want to maybe consider, whereas a mental health, doctor, obviously a physical health doctor can make those determinations and diagnosis, how far and wide you go. And so not putting down anybody, please. It's not being negative on anybody. I know I can't make that diagnosis. I can't make, and nor would you want me to make that determination. So that's kind of where we went with it.
Norm, this is Marilyn. It would seem to me in my opinion, when we're talking about that social worker, that would lean more toward a social worker that would have a master's degree that would probably be comfortable diagnosing, say, a mental health disability as maybe opposed to a physical disability. Is that the consensus from your staff?
Norm, you're muted, Norm.
More of a psychiatrist or a psychologist is kind of that would be able to diagnose that mental health or behavior health issue. My experience in past lives regarding, social worker, they help get people connected to services, et and expedite them through, whether it be housing, whether it be get them in contact with, physical or behavior health. And they do a great job at that. So that's why we kind of drew the line at the certified medical professional from the state of Florida. So again, that was the demarcation. I mean,
in the past, for instance, for persons who, and I know this because I am, persons who are legally blind and they're receiving services from the Division of Blind Services, for instance, one of their counselors who has access to medical records could verify that that person is legally blind.
and they have, and they continue to do so. And that's
Okay.
where we'll talk a little bit about the new ADA application and
Right, no,
talking about the permanent. Yeah.
I ask that because it falls into this category. These persons are not doctors, but they are trained counselors / social workers who have access to the medical records and can verify that. Bob, can you give some input here? For instance, my particular physician will sign off on my application. We have a report, a medical report, and he will sign off. I do not have to go into the office physically, but there are some physicians who do not. And so I think this is where it presents a problem for individuals who are permanently disabled or, and may not see a doctor from time, from on a regular basis, but would find it a hardship if it only has to be a specific medical professional. But I see your point as well. Bob, are you able to give us some input here? And Crystal as well, maybe, because we worked on this with the hearings that we did a couple of years ago when someone's about someone's eligibility.
Yes, yeah, I have a couple of concerns. I guess where to start. I don't understand why this was changed, but the fact that it has, we need to change it back, in my opinion. I can't talk about every social worker, but I can tell you that I have a lot of patients, we have a lot of patients that, on Medicaid or on these Medicaid HMOs, which are horrible. And if they can get in to see their primary care physician, they're one of 60 or more patients that doctor is going to spend 2 or 3 minutes with a day before they move on to the next patient. They're not going to have the time or want to fill out an application. That being said, these patients are coming to therapy and are working with therapists that have doctorates that know these patients intimately and will know their ability, know when someone is slacking or knows when someone really needs the program. The same with, licensed mental health counselors. Their master's degrees more towards doctorates than bachelor's degrees. And I just think that if the patient, the rider needs the service, I don't think I think it should be changed back.
Okay, and who was the other person I called on to speak? Crystal. Anybody else can chime in as well?
I just think that I'm not comfortable with the social worker making the decision. I could say that much. I think that a licensed doctor should be making the decision, or a licensed mental health person should be making the decision on the mental health side. Like I said, I went with my mother to her appointment and I just thought it was atrocious. They made her walk a few steps and that was it. We were done. So what did they evaluate? Nothing. I just don't think they have the capacity to do an evaluation on a disabled person or a mentally disabled person.
Madam Chair, might I ask Crystal, are you speaking about the functional class, the functional assessment?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Other comments or questions from other members of the board? Committee,
Ham-
don't mean to exclude you.
You have a hand by Ms. Berry.
All right, Ms. Berry?
Yes, I just, one, I'm trying to remember what it said before, and I can't remember. But if we're trying to, we're not trying to make it more difficult, and we're trying to make it where the consumers are able to take advantage. I think we definitely should open ourselves up to all that can, because a lot of the information, I believe it was Ms. Marilyn that said before, even whether it's a social worker, a nurse, whoever, that information can be found in medical records. And then if we look at the last statement, they're verifying, even if it's a social worker too, because we have the licensed clinical social worker, the master's level, but it's certifying that the medical information provided on the application is true and correct. They're still having to certify, and they're held under different ethical standards as well. And they're still having to, once they sign it, they're having to say, hey, I'm signing my signature and license number indicating this information is accurate. And so it's something to be considered at that point, especially if we're trying to help the community. We're not trying to make it a little more difficult. And much of what was stated at the meeting in November was that it's definitely going to be a challenge with us focusing simply on a licensed physician, that it's going to me, just make it more difficult for them to even access the service if they can't get the application submitted.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Norm, what would be a good reconciliation to this concern from you and Dana, maybe?
Yeah, I think what we'll have to do is put some language together and we'll run it by you guys. We'll go back and forth, we'll get some recommendations, and then we'll go from there.
All right.
So Norm, would you be able to do that prior to the February 10th meeting so that this comes forward? I think this is something that needs to be addressed sooner than later. As you know, the next meeting is not until May. And so if we're able to get something together now to address it so that, okay. Madam Chair, you do have a hand by Mr. Wayne Olson and then Dana Baker.
All right, in that order, please. Mr.
Okay,
Olson?
I'll just throw in a little bit from vocational rehab. When we make someone eligible, which is probably more stringent, but maybe not, of being eligible to ride the bus, we definitely use medical doctors and medical and psychiatric psychological professionals. My concern is that if you open it up to any social work, you know, I can understand a licensed clinical social worker making
Me too.
some kind of diagnosis of the mental health. But beyond that, to just have a social worker say this person has a disability, in my opinion, is risky and open to possible abuse.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Dana?
Yes, I just wanted to say, I think to Virginia's point, we can definitely get something back to you, but I think we need to have an internal discussion about the regulation, as well as, for my understanding, I heard Bob say there was a change to the application. And so I want to know from my team why the change was made. And so I think we need to go back and have some internal discussion, and then we can get back to you with some recommendation moving forward.
Okay. In defense of access links and our committee that I did serve on, along with Crystal, I think there were concerns about being certain that who was signing off was actually a medical person eligible to sign off. Yes, we want to make it easier for the riders, but at the same time, there's a responsibility to be sure that, you know, legally that person is able to sign off. So just saying that, Dana, from the perspective of those of us who were consumers, considered this an area to think about again too. But coming back and hearing from some of our board members, let's see what you all are able to bring forth and what kind of conclusion we can come up with.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Amelia's hand. I'm not sure if it's still up from before, if he has another comment.
Bob, do you have another comment? Something you haven't mentioned before? Or did you forget to lower your hand?
You're muted, Bob.
Again, I was doing so well. And this is just relative to my world. I know the patients that we have written and signed applications for have always come from a master's level clinician or higher, you know, a DPT, a master's degree. If you could get the doctor to sign it, great, but it was a social worker that had some higher level understanding degree. And I don't know the word verbiage. I don't think I ever read the verbiage, but for me, it was always just assumed that if you were at that level, more than just a bachelor's degree, you know, maybe at this point, and this is going to sound horrible, but just a paper pusher, you weren't qualified. But if you had a higher understanding of physical rehab, then it was accepted that was fine, that was adequate.
All right. Thank you for your comment. We need to move on unless there is someone else who hasn't spoken that needs to give input.
There are no hands at this moment, Madam Chair. Members, this has been very, very helpful conversation. And as Dana mentioned earlier, we will work with the Access Link staff to bring a resolution back to the LCB.
All right. The next item is the CTC update. Mr. Hinkling?
Madam Chair, there is one item before his.
Okay,
and,
I'm sorry. Oh, you're right. I am so sorry. Miss Virginia has review of our CTC evaluation process.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Baker, for being here. I recognize that you have to leave for another meeting. Thank you. So it is that time again to review the Community Transportation Coordinator, who is AKA Access Links. Each year we are required by our grant, according to our grant, to review their performance. And so that starts here today. And I'll remind you that the categories that you typically, next slide please, that you typically will evaluate fall into two categories. One more slide. Operations and administrative. You'll review the 5 items and under operations and the 4 under administrative. And what I would like to do today is to ask of the Quality Assurance Task Force members that if there is any additional information or any training or a briefing that you would like to receive in any of these categories prior to the time that you will be conducting this evaluation, to give you a little more comfort in terms of your ability to evaluate, please let me know. And we are happy to work with Access Links to bring those to you. For instance, you know, this eligibility discussion that we've had in the past, we've brought briefings to you so that you would understand a little better about billing or reporting so that you can make those informed decisions. Next slide, please. Other categories that you were able to take a look at, excuse me, last year, you added coordination of providers, including those taxis and TNCs. You also added transition of customers to another mode of transportation. Of course, that has kind of been inhibited by COVID, but these were some of the categories that you added, and you still have the opportunity to do that this coming year. Next slide. So here today, we kick off this process with you to find out if there's any additional areas that you would like to see evaluated. We'll bring the review to the LCB February 10th for their full approval. We will conduct the evaluation electronically as we have in the past few years. The evaluation period it'll be open from February 20th through March 4th. And then we will have the final evaluation report submitted to the full LCB at your May meeting, and then to the CTD before June 30th. And so that is the presentation to kicking off. We will again provide a link to an electronic survey, which is consistent with the hard copy document that you'll receive. And so I will answer any questions if there are any. Next slide there, okay. I think everybody's used to this now, so. All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Miss Virginia, and I apologize for the oversight. Now, before we leave though, are there any questions about the evaluation process? And if you have any concerns, please reach out to Virginia.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Mr. Hinkling, you're up for the next presentation, our CTC update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we'll go ahead and bring the slides up. So this Mobility Services CTC update and report for this past quarter. So it's good to be back with everybody. So go ahead, next slide, please. Just give a real quick overview of kind of what things are going on. Access Links performance, customer service performance, and ongoing initiatives, kind of things that we're doing to try to improve the experience with Access Links, and then have time for questions. Next slide, please. As you can all imagine, and you've all lived through, as we have, COVID is still providing a lot of challenges and providing for a challenging environment to work in, etc. We are still doing vaccination trips, and we are doing testing trips. And so I'd like to address Sherry's question, or excuse me, the first question that came in regards to testing. We are certainly not trying to make it difficult for anybody to get tested. If somebody calls and they want to get tested, we are trying to accommodate them in every way possible. As you may recall, when testing really got going, maybe 3 weeks ago, but more likely 2 weeks ago, there was tremendously long lines. In some cases, people were waiting in lines going to like Barnett Park for 3.5 and 4 hours. And that made it very, very difficult to have one person on a vehicle, maybe two from the same family, and tie that vehicle up and that driver up for that period of time. It took that individual driver out of commission from serving anybody else for that time. And you all know, for the last year, we've had some real challenges with on-time performance and late trips and et cetera. So we did work with Orange County and worked with them and asked them about, like at Barnett Park, if we could have a drive-through type situation where we could have a separate lane that we'd be able to get into and be able to improve the turnaround time so that we could do it just like the vaccination runs. Unfortunately, there it was not possible. However, we've been working. They opened up a site. It's a Southern Sports Complex. And if you want to go get tested there, we will take you there. What we do is we contact them, let them know ahead of time that you're coming, and they try to treat it as a round trip as much as possible. And we call it a drive-through. Now, the vaccination trips have been a little easier because in most cases, they did set up a drive-through type operation for us, and we were able to either notify them ahead of time, like when we were over at Valencia College, or they had separate accommodations for us. So we are still trying to improve that process. So we obviously don't want to deter anybody from getting tested. Absolutely, but when somebody's going to testing, a lot of them thinking that they may have been exposed. And so we have a limited amount of drivers who are willing to do what we call the COVID trips and the vehicles. And so we're trying to just make best use of our resources so we can serve a greater number of people in the community. So hope you understand, we're not trying to make it tougher, but we are trying to make it as efficient as possible. So, but we are addressing that. We still have the dialysis individuals that test positive for COVID. Again, they have to be segregated in a vehicle that is being driven by somebody who has got the proper vaccinations and has been taking precautions, et cetera, gets the extra cleaning. And so that we still have a long and large demand for those types of trips. And then just the staffing challenges here. Myself, a couple weeks, 3 weeks ago, tested positive for it, so I had to work from home and everything. And so you can imagine, but an operator who drives a vehicle cannot work from home. So he or she, if they do test positive or they think they need to be quarantined for some period of time because they may have been exposed, then they're taken out of commission. So that has put some challenges on us too. So it's been a continuing interesting time, especially with this Omicron variant. And so, but we're trying to learn how to work with it for the good of our community and the people who ride our services. Next slide, please. Overall, trips are still down. In October, we're just over 40,000 trips. We dipped down in November, usually because of the Thanksgiving holiday. We always have lower numbers, 39,763. And in December, of course, with the end of the year holidays and New Year's and everything, trip demand was rather low. The interesting thing, going into January, we all thought we would see a pretty dramatic increase, but we haven't experienced that yet. So we're still trying to figure that out as to why. The only thing that we can really put our finger on is the fact that COVID-19 is still out there. A lot of people have it, either are not going to school, not going to church, not going to places of employment, et cetera, staying away from the doctor's offices, whatever the case may be, only because they don't want to become exposed or they have been exposed, et cetera. So it is keeping the number of trips requested down. Next chart, please. And again, just a breakdown, TD and ADA trips. ADA obviously still, always double of what our TD trips are. And so that was just a breakdown of kind of showing you where we're at as far as the breakout of trips and the trip types. Next chart, please. A big issue that we've had has been obviously call center performance. Been able to do a much better job, get it down to about less than 5 minutes. Our goal, we want to be at 3. A lot of those calls are still looking for their ETAs, which right now is a little easier because we're only using the MV transportation service. And so, but there's still sometimes that there's late trips. And so we're getting quite a few calls on those, but the team's been doing a good job in handling it. Although in October, we were at 46,000 calls, and now in December, we only had 43,000 calls. So obviously less calls helps the answer rate, but also we had some folks that were out because of COVID and things of that sort. So that kind of impacted us also. So less calls, but short staff, kind of a unique thing. And then call center performance as far as the calls answered, everything, still maintaining a pretty good clip there. Next chart, please.
Norm, you have a question by Mr. Melia. Madam Chair, if that is in order as he's presenting instead of waiting till the end.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, Bob, go ahead. Bob, you're
Sorry
recognized.
about that. Sorry about that. This isn't actually a question, it's a compliment. I used the MV app for years or tried to, and for some reason, or maybe a variety of reasons, it would just shut down and not work with no notice. Fedner set me up with the Links app, which is great. I have never had an issue with it. I've probably been using it for 3 months now. Maybe if there was a greater push at a marketing campaign, so to speak, on using this app, maybe that would be helpful in reducing the cost for the for ETAs.
And we appreciate that, and we are doing exactly that. One of the things we are working with MV, they're even improving their app even more to track the trips. In fact, there's a meeting I'm late to right now is talking about the possibility of doing some texting, and that would come out and let you know where your trip is. So yeah, we are trying to improve that on a continuous basis. So, but thank you for the compliment, Bob, and we'll send that along to Fedner. Thank you. Next chart, please. So ongoing initiatives, we continue to do operator recruitment. We've talked with the Quality Assurance Task Force in the past, how Links and MV Transportation got together, did a market study, found that the pay on the starting new operators was significantly low for the community. So we were able to get that, and that has paid dividends. They're now back up to 340 operators right now. So that is a good thing. We are still working on some additional vehicles. We talked about fleet expansion. We weren't able to get brand new vehicles, but what we have been able to do is work out with the FTA to hold on to some older vehicles for a period of time while we're taking delivery of some new vehicles. So while the older ones were supposed to be replaced by these new ones, we're going to hold on to the older ones. Gives us a little more flexibility, gives us a little bit better scheduling opportunities so that we don't have any delayed trips, etc. Still working to upgrade our trapeze system to a cloud-based system that will help us be able to make reservations faster and have less downtime in that manner. But also too, then we're going to bring the NeighborLink system into the trapeze system, which then that's another opportunity for another mode of service for someone that says, hey, I'm not eligible, but I do need a ride. I'm not eligible for Access Links, say, but I do need a ride. And is there another mode for me to serve me in my neighborhood and in my community? And that NeighborLink could be that. Also, what it does is somebody that does use Access Links, but you remember that you need to take a trip that day and you are served by a NeighborLink system, then you can make that reservation that day, and it has still the same ADA requirements. It has all the, but you don't have to be eligible for the Access Link system. You can, if you're in a chair, you have a mobility device of some sort. You know, all the NeighborLink vehicles are fully equipped to handle any ADA passenger or any passenger for that matter. And it's within a 2-hour period of time, you can be picked up. And then as Bob just mentioned, my access tracking system, that is the improvements that we're working on with MV Transportation. Next chart, please. Texting capabilities is something that we're working on, that we can be able to send you a text as to the status of your trip, if it's 10 minutes away, 5 minutes away, etc. If you have that capability, that would be, and you want to sign up for it, that'd be a big help. New phone and customer contact system. We're going through that procurement cycle right now, very close to making final decisions. And so you're going to see some real improvements in our phone system here in the not too distant future.
Madam Chair, you have a hand by Ms.
Sure.
Berry.
Ms. Berry?
Thank you. Hi, Norm. My question is regarding the GPS system because we're still receiving some feedback regarding the routes being much longer routes and the drivers confused sometimes as to where they're going. So are they not allowed to use their cell phones? And then how often is the GPS system updated so that it has the most current with the shortest route? And
Well,
are the drivers required to use a specific route? Like, how does that work with the GPS?
Well, it's a matter of the scheduling, and that's something that we're continuing to work on. That's a great question. And again, we're still we got all the operators. We still got some new operators that are out there, and they're not real familiar with everything just yet. Not all of them, while they're hired as operators, are going through training, so they haven't been put out into the service. The GPS system is updated all the time. I mean, that's part of the service, obviously. And the trapeze system sends out a manifest, tells them the way to travel and everything. It really is. Sometimes it's just the scheduling that they said, they're picking up Mr. Smith now, and then they got to go pick up Mr. Jones. And that's the way they're told to go. And because some of these trips have been placed in because maybe a route got closed, a driver didn't show up, etc. So, but we're trying to work through all that. We don't want anybody to be on these trips for very long, and we've minimized that. That was really prevalent during the driver shortage and the operator shortage. So we've been able to minimize that here dramatically in the past few weeks, but we're still trying to get better at that.
Let me ask, it's like one example I know that I received was, say we're going from point A to point B, but there's a passenger that's on the van and we're passing the location that they're going to at that time. They actually pass the location to pick up an individual to come back. Like, how, that's the part that I guess I don't quite understand how that works.
Yeah, and the system is supposed to identify that and not let that happen. And that's where our dispatchers with MV Transportation need to be reviewing that. And again, part of that complaint was that we had so few operators out there operating that it almost made it inevitable that was going to happen. Whereas now we got more vehicles that are available to be out there on the road, and we got the correct number of operators. We should not see these types of things happening in the future, at least not at the level that they were happening in the past.
So is it possible, and I don't know, so if I'm the driver and I know that I'm going to pass B to get to where I'm going, and can the driver just call into the service center or call center to say, hey, I'm going to drop this customer here and keep going? Is that possible, or do they have to follow the route or there's
consequences? Well, the first order of business is follow the manifest that's been provided to you. If they now know it and they know that they can, without causing the further trip, as you're describing it, to be delayed too extensively, they need to call that into dispatch, and dispatch take a quick look at it and give them that authorization to do so. Really comes down to dispatch and kind of watching the bigger board.
Okay, and the drivers are, well, I know you said some of them are new, but they're aware, or if they receive in training, they receive the information that they are able to do that.
Yeah, they are required. If any incident, or if they know of something. But when you have new drivers, a lot of inexperienced drivers out there right now. So, these are the things that we're trying to fix, and it will take some time. We've had some that got kind of lost, even though they had directions, they still kind of turned around. And, with things changing in the construction and sometimes the weather, it's not unlikely that somebody could get a little bit turned around and get on the wrong side of a community where they, they're a little bit further away from where they should have been. And that's where dispatch needs to really help them and get them back online.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Again, we got the authorization for the RFP, the request for proposal. That is getting ready to be sent out into the public, looking for proposals as to the potential for a new service provider for our paratransit services. And then I don't know if Bruce or somebody from planning is on to talk about the update to the NeighborLink service down in Osceola County. I don't see anybody, so unfortunately. Anyways, Link's got a grant to try to improve some of the fixed route service, but we're also looking at expanding the NeighborLink service down in the Seminole County area. And one of the things that I wanted the planning team to kind of address is how we're doing a lot of analysis right now. I know the NeighborLink service has not been utilized nor advertised very well in the past, and we're trying to do a better job. But we're also trying to look at exactly the service area that a NeighborLink serves to try to make sure that it's encompassing all the dialysis and medical centers and education opportunities, so that if somebody's living within that service area, again, and even if they have a challenge with their mobility, but they can still use NeighborLink instead of having to call 24 hours ahead or 2 or 3 days ahead for a reservation. You're going to have those days, like if you're going to a class or maybe your job changes a little bit, that a NeighborLink might be the better mode of service for you. So we'll keep talking about that. And again, every vehicle is ADA accessible and very comfortable, and the operators know how to use the lifts. But it just may be that we can provide more services out there and a different mode of service to get you from where you're at to where you need to be. So
Norm,
yeah.
Norm, but please keep in mind the limit with that NeighborLink is the scope of where you're going and how far that NeighborLink goes.
True.
So that may not be the rosy picture that you're painting. If my job is all the way downtown and I live in West Orlando, then that's not going to be the solution. However,
no, it'll never work. That part would never work for you.
No, but if you're a very short distance from where you're going, around that little circle area, that is the answer.
Yeah, and that's where more we're thinking is that if you have to go, say for a a medical checkup, and it's in your community served by a NeighborLink, it may be more flexible for that individual to use NeighborLink versus having to call 24 hours in advance, especially if maybe something changed or you need to go stop by the store after you get back. And instead of having to lay that all out, you can be a little bit more flexible. But in the scenario that you mentioned, Madam Chair, you're absolutely right. Okay, next chart, please. And then I'm just going to go ahead and maybe address it here, Virginia. Right now, they look at the schedule to have the Human Services Transportation Plan final draft report. They are going to try to have that by March 1 for the Quality Assurance Task Force review. And then the idea is in April, be able to present that to the final to the QATF, and then present it on May 12th. Excuse me, my voice is going. Present to the Tdlcb by May 12th. So you'd asked me to kind of address that. That's what our grants team is working with the consultant who's putting that together, and they think they can put those dates are pretty good, that they can present that, and gives everybody time to review. And I know you got a lot going on in the April Quality Assurance Task Force meeting, but it's important only because we got to have it to the commission by July.
Norm, another question, Marilyn, going back to the RFP, You said that you're possibly going to be ready to put it out on the street. Did you say by December? Is that what you said?
Now, we got an authorization by the board in December. So we are still in the process. It's going through its final reviews right now, et cetera.
Okay.
So it most likely in the first part of February will actually go out to the different transit agencies and so that they can start preparing proposals.
All right, I go back to my question from the last time we met. We would like to have a member of this board who is disabled represented on that committee.
And we want you to be
along with hopefully Miss Virginia.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes to both questions. So.
All right, very good. Are there other questions for Norm from the board at this time?
Don't see any hands. But Madam Chair, if I may just, tell Norm and the team, thank you for outlining the process for getting the 2 plans that are required to be adopted this year. That Health Services Transportation Plan and the Transportation Disadvantaged Service Plan are both documents are quite large. So you're going to be put to work in this next cycle. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up, and so that he would help you understand what that timeline is. We have to have that to the Transportation Commission by June 30. So it's going to be a lot of reading on your part, and but hopefully it'll come forward in great shape, that it would not be as voluminous maybe.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows that the Health Services Transportation Plan is part of the TDSP. And so, and that the Health Services Plan is going to have the bigger update portion of it. Whereas the Transportation Disadvantage portion, that's a minor update. It's not the major that we originally kind of thought it was. So that'll have a lot less changes in it to be reviewed. But it's the health services one that really this year we need to focus on.
One more question, Norm. Let me go back. It was another question that Ms. Brunn had. Looking at the ADA application, where we're going to try to not have those clients visit the doctor as often. They are permanently disabled. Can you address that for us, please?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I meant to. I wrote myself a note, and I know Sherry had brought that up. This is something that we've been working on for several months, Madam Chair, as you well know. You had brought it up at the time. And that new ADA application and the new process does allow exactly that. So that when you get through the eligibility cycle, or come to it in the future, you will not have to go through the full process. You'll be asked a couple questions to make sure we got your address and contact information correct. And, and then just to self-certify that indeed you still have that. And it actually, we'll speed that process up, make it a lot easier for everybody that has a permanent disability. So thank you for the question. And I meant to address that during the presentation here, but thank you, Madam Chair, for reminding me.
And when will that roll out?
The new ADA application is out. It started the beginning of this year. And so as we get into that, cycle now where eligibility is coming up and everything, we should have all the information to make it easier for everybody.
So when an individual now knows that their application is coming up, they are permanently disabled, their application should look different than the one they've been receiving before?
The application will be different, right? It'll be strictly ADA. If they're ADA, it'll be, the 2 applications used to be combined, which caused confusion, and they're now completely set apart and separate.
Norm, I really want to thank you. I have been advocating for this for 10 years, for 10 long years. So Thank you very much.
So I think I can quit now, so I'll move on and I accomplished one thing, so I can move on from links, yeah.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Hinkling? If so, please use the raised hand button and unmute yourself when recognized.
Mr.
You all have
Mealy.
been very patient today. Do we have any raised hands?
Mr. Melia's hand is raised.
Bob?
Yes, I'm sorry again. You guys probably won't want me back. I've been asking so many questions. But I try to be the best advocate I can be for access links, be it, trying to teach a driver or educate a rider. Word got to me yesterday that the new vehicles will have cameras on the inside. Norm, can you just explain the reason why? I don't know, in the era of Big Brother and mistrust with government and politics, if I can provide an answer, I will to.
Bob, I'll
Yes,
let Norm go, but I'll take on this one as well. It's another one of my big beefs. This is for safety, and it also moves the liability question. Someone has fallen there, or there's an incident on that board, on that vehicle. You can roll that camera back right away. It has it. There are cameras on paratransit vehicles in other areas of the state. They are on our school buses. And in my opinion, they don't want to be on camera, don't ride. I'm sorry. It is for safety precautions. It protects the driver and it protects that passenger. Once again, this is something I have been advocating for years. Norm, take it.
well, let me just say, Marilyn, you finished my question. I am of the opinion, if you got nothing to hide, then ride, and I use it twice a day. I don't have anything to hide. But there are going to be people out there, and that's what I will tell people. And that's what I told someone this morning when they overheard. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, yeah, there are big cameras in the vehicles already, so it's nothing new. These just seem to be more cameras. And I guess maybe I was a little curious, have there been more incidents with unruly passengers?
Well, we've always had cameras on the vehicle. And that is, we've had a drive cam system that should something happen, like in an accident, it will start recording a severe G-force movement where really, it looks like, or the operator themselves could turn it on if they had a incident that was going on that they felt that they were either being threatened or needed to be recorded for to be reviewed at a later time, like Chair Baldwin said. The idea of the cameras now, the updated system, is be very similar to what we have on the fixed route, where they run all the time. It'll give us a better scope of view, so that not only can you see the operations of the operator and see how they are driving the vehicle and interacting with the customers, but also you'll have a camera that sees the cab, but you also have a camera that shows the exterior of the doorway, and then also the ramp or the lift. So, and again, this is to make sure for both safety of our operators and the safety of our customers. Unfortunately, we go through a good screening process with our operators, but occasionally we get a bad one. And then too, individuals, for whatever reason, occasionally have a bad day, and they're not the nicest to our operators. So again, this is to protect us. If there's unsafe conditions, unsafe driving that goes on, and we do get complaints in regards to, operator behavior or something, or the way they're driving. And it's really helps us to be able to go back and be able to observe how that operator was driving and performing to either prove or disprove the allegations. You asked the question, Bob, in regards to, are we getting more complaints? We have been very fortunate in the paratransit world. We haven't seen an extraordinarily amount increase in complaints. The one area that we have had is in the mask mandate. There are folks that don't want to wear a mask, and or they fight the operator on the mask, but it has been rarer, I should say, on the paratransit world than it has been in the fixed route. Fixed route's been very, very tough, and consequently, the discussions about having to wear a mask has really put the operators on the fixed route in some rather precarious positions in some cases. We haven't had too many of those in paratransit, but it's more being able to, the cameras again, to validate whether an allegation, whether a customer mistreated an operator, which is not right, and we got to take care of our operators, or that an operator was, not handling a situation, or did an unsafe safety practice like on the lift or something of that sort. So it just protects everybody that's on the system.
Yeah, and perfectly agreeable to me. I totally understand and support it. I didn't know if, insurance was mandating it, or if there's some kind of, financial break. If that's the case, I will tell you that, yeah, everyone has a bad day, but there have been more times than not, I have given a driver my cell phone number and have said, if this person actually lodges the complaint, have your supervisor call me, because in my opinion, you did nothing wrong.
All right,
I
thank you for
appreciate
that, Bob. Thank you for that. Okay, this
And I
concludes,
apologize for the long-winded answer, but I want to get that all out there too.
It happens.
all right, this concludes our presentations. Are there any committee members who have a final comment? If so, use the raise hand function and unmute yourself when you're recognized. I was a bit choppy with that. Are there any committee members who have final comments? Please use your raised hand function and unmute yourself when you're recognized.
I do not see any hands.
All right, now we'll go on to public comments. It's now time for public comments. If there are any members of the public that wishes to make comments, please use the raise hand function and you'll be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll unmute your mic. After you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comment to 2 minutes. Are there any comments at this time?
Madam Chair, we have a hand by Ms. Sherry Brun.
Sherry?
Hi, it's Sherry Brun, 1944 Conway Road, apartment 8, Orlando, Florida, 32812. First, I want to thank Norm for answering my questions. I was told there were no drive-through testing available, that this was at a Walgreens, and they said we can drop you off at the drive-through, but the Walgreens wouldn't let me walk through the drive-through. They won't take walkthroughs. And I was told by the customer service rep that they would take me there, and then I could schedule a pickup and they would pick me up, but I would have to go through on my own, which was impossible. So I don't know if there's
Yeah. And I want to apologize for that, because going through a Walgreens, we'll have to get that corrected. So I apologize.
Okay, no problem. And I haven't looked at my application because I haven't gotten someone to read it to me yet, but I will try, and hopefully I got the streamlined one, and that would be very exciting. And I appreciate you doing that. And if I didn't get the streamlined one, I'll be in touch. But thank you so much for making it easier for those of us with permanent conditions. And thank you for this wonderful meeting, Marilyn, for chairing it so aptly, and Miss Virginia for all your help. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Let's see, you have a hand by Miss Carolyn Campbell.
Honorable Campbell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Carolyn Campbell, 1302 Barbados Avenue, Orlando, Florida, 32825. Again, I want to echo what Sherry said. Absolutely wonderful meeting. Thank you very much, Norm, for answering questions and improving the service. Thank you, Madam Chair, and Virginia for this meeting. One of the things I just want to point out with the access link, the website, the app that tells you when your ride is coming, etc. It is wonderful when it does work. I will say that there's frequently times when it counts down. You know, your ride will be here in 5 minutes. Your ride will be here in 2 minutes. Your ride will be arriving momentarily. I will be even on the bus when the vehicle when it still says your ride is arriving momentarily. So they are definitely tweaks that need to be made with that. But as I said, it is wonderful when it does work. It has a lot of wonderful features to it, and I would just like to make sure that it's synced, because a lot of the time it doesn't seem to be synced with the GPS at all. Thank you very much for at least having those out there and improving the service. The other piece that I want to make sure that's understood is that a lot of the disabled individuals and a lot of people that are using the service do not have a smartphone and do not have the ability to use those types of apps. So just want to point that out as well. Thank you.
Absolutely understand. Yeah.
Very good. And yes, Carolyn, you are absolutely right. We must remember that there are individuals who cannot, and will not be able to keep up with technology. Point well taken. Are there any other comments?
There are no other hands, Madam Chair, but I would like to say to the three who have stayed throughout this entire meeting, thank you for your participation. The attendees, it's very important to this process that you be engaged in. We're thankful that you took the time out today.
I want to echo that. We've had good participation, from the public, the board participation today, the committee participation today has been outstanding. It is so important that we remain engaged, especially when we're working virtually. Thank you so much, because the service that you provide enables persons with disabilities to live independently using mobility services. So we are so grateful. Norm, you and your team, Miss Salida, Ben, just hats off to you. And the staff at MetroPlan, Lena, Miss Lisa Smith, and Miss Kathy Goldbarb, we could not do what we do without you. Thank you so very much. All right. The next meeting of the Quality Assurance Task Force is scheduled for April 26, 2022. Staff will let us know whether we will be in person or if we will have another virtual workshop. And at this time, if there are no further business, we stand adjourned. Thank you,
Madam Chairman and members. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.